And what is this? Now, I see a lot of names here.
This is, he's enclosing here to his cousin a copy of the prospectus of the Zoological Society of London when he went back to England finally in 1824. He was, by this time, very involved in natural history and so forth, and the idea of establishing a zoo for animals, Zoological Society, a scientific study of animals too.
He was very interested in botanics as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, and botanical things too. But this is his proposal to establish an organisation like this. And it's interesting, this prospectus of the society, the names, the original names who signed, he's added too in his own handwriting at the bottom.
His name is right there too, though.
Yes.
Right there.
There, yes, in the middle, yes. Yes, these are important people, and of course once he got the support of these people, it became a lot easier to establish the society. There's a great support for it. And so this is the beginning of the London Zoo. And
the London Zoo?
Yes.
Any basis at all for the Singapore Zoo?
No, that's right. He, of course, did keep animals himself. In Singapore, of course, he was here for very limited periods of time. He had 3 visits, but the first 2 were very brief, and then the final one from October 22 to June 1823 again. It was a difficult time for Raffles. He was in conflict with Farquhar about the plan of the town, what he wanted, etc. And I suppose it might have been that it was the worst time he ever suffered from these headaches of his, which were... and he was being driven quite mad by Farquhar's opposition to what he was trying to do. And the correspondence is interesting in the Singapore archives. They're having virtually a daily interchange of letters. Raffles at the top of the hill, Farquhar at the bottom, and then exchanging correspondence on a daily basis. And this was obviously provoking to Raffles, and as I say, he was suffering these endless blinding headaches. I feel enormously sympathetic to Raffles, and you have to make great excuses for him. There's nothing worse than that type of headache. And as I say, now we know it was
because of the hemorrhage.
Hemorrhaging of blood into the brain.
Now what do we have over here? Sophia Lady Raffles.
Yes, Lady Raffles, yes. Yes, her letters survive in the 2 collections of Lady Raffles letters, one in London and the other one here. This collection of Lady Raffles letters are 58 of them.
She's the second wife.
Yes, this tells her of her life after the death of Raffles, essentially.
Oh, she's not that bad looking.
Well, this is the thing. At the time, the contemporaries said about her that the general consensus was that she wasn't a great beauty, and Raffles himself said in that letter written from Henley upon Thames that she was no great beauty. Arnold, who delivered her first child, on the other hand, said that she was an attractive woman. And I think to our taste today, she is quite attractive.
She looks quite like a model, actually.
Yes. But Raffles owed more to her than to... in terms of his historical fame, than to any other person. If she had not written the memoir of Raffles, maybe Raffles' name wouldn't be as prominent.
So it's a little bit of a one-way street where love is concerned. She loved him a lot more than he loved her in some ways.
It's very difficult to decide that, but one would assume that. After all, she was 30 when Raffles married her, and in those days,
considered an old maid at that point.
Well, it was beginning to be thought at that stage that she was, and so I suppose she has the inevitable gratitude of her man.
Making an honest woman of her.
I don't know about an honest woman, but a more interesting life, perhaps, for her. But she, of course, was absolutely adored Raffles. And couldn't bear being separated from him. And whenever Raffles made 2 great exploratory trips in Sumatra, to central Sumatra and further south, she insisted on accompanying him. She wouldn't leave her husband behind.
Now, what was she doing before she got married? Because she was 30 when she got married.
Well, I suppose not very much. She was living with her parents in Cheltenham when Raffles met her. And...
why did he marry her?
I don't know. Why do people marry? Think about her. She was a woman of character. I mean, and Raffles must have sensed that immediately. There's no question. And one can't help but have great admiration for her. Enormous. And after his death, of course, she decided that she was going to write a memoir of him. And although she said she was totally unfit for the purpose, nonetheless she struggled, and she produced this in 1830, this huge memoir of her husband.
Which you'll see later, right?
It was one?
It's here as well?
Yes, there's a beautiful copy around the corner we'll have a look at. And it was that memoir that established Raffles' fame. Within a year of its publication, Raffles' name begins to appear in the biographical dictionaries. You know, the information is lifted from the memoir. So her writing of that memoir was very, very important for establishing Raffles.
Behind every successful man, there's always a strong woman.
Yes, and she was a delicate woman, of course, subject to fainting fits and so forth, but nonetheless a great determination, great character. And you can't overemphasize.
Her script is very different from Raffles.
Yes, it is different, I suppose. It's, well...
It's never as straight, it's always slightly curving in a way.
Yes, it's...
very feminine, a lot of big views.
It's very difficult in transcribing, too, because of her use of capital letters. You know, well, they all use them, Raffles, too, capital letters would do. But she tended to use capital letters a lot, so in transcribing it for publication, you never quite know whether to go to standardize the capital B as a small b, or it's quite clear, baby there. Yes, her overuse of capital letters is a headache for transcribers of her correspondence.
It's sort of like how some people write blogs today, and they capitalize here and there, and they use punctuation in a very strange way.
Yes. And where there's no great concern. Well, you mentioned punctuation. Yes, punctuation hardly appears in her letters.
I don't see any commas or full stops here.
No. And of course, Raffles himself was always a great user of the dash at the end of a sentence. So full stops don't appear very much.
It's like how in modern days we put ...
Yeah, for omissions, yes, additions.